Thanks. I just realized that I could have started the presentation before, so I'm gonna take a little moment here to.
That is okay. We have plenty of time today, and feel free to stay after the talk to have a discussion and share your ideas also about the talk.
So there are people who get sick when they encounter certain kinds of motion on web pages, and when I say sick, that I mean things like they might get nauseous, dizzy. They might even have to throw up, and many of them have to go lay down, rest for longer periods of time after this. And these people can actually they have an option to use a setting to reduce motion, and that setting it's on the operating systems level. And we as developers, we can respect that setting because there is this media feature called prefers reduced motion. So my name is Eevis, and I'm a developer in Helsinki office. And today I will be talking about, well, who are these people who suffer from who might get sick when they encounter this certain kinds of motion, and how we can actually implement that prefers reduced motion thing. Before diving into the actual who and how, I want to start off with a little personal story. It was about 2 years ago when one morning I woke up and I realized that every time when I'm moving my head, everything's just there was this vertigo, and it lasted for me it felt like forever, but I think it was something like 10 or 20 seconds each time, and that happened every time when I was moving my head. So you can imagine that it was really unpleasant, at least. And it lasted about 2 weeks, and I went to see a doctor, and I was diagnosed with this is a hard word in English, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo. So for those of you who know Finnish, it's hyvänlaatuinen asentohuimaus. And you might maybe wonder what no, sorry. I'm still I noticed that I'm really nervous here, maybe because I'm really sharing something personal. So yeah, I survived this 2 weeks of constant vertigo from every head movement, and I thought that okay, yeah, great, now everything's back to normal and everything's fine and no problem. But pretty soon after that, I started noticing that when I encounter certain kinds of movement on website, I start feeling a little maybe disoriented or dizzy, sometimes a little nauseous. But that was just it was unpleasant, yeah, but it was okay. I could continue using that web page. And it was this way until I think it was before Christmas, when I was doing some chocolate shopping, and I went to this one, my favorite chocolate store's website, and I was about to order some chocolate from there. And then I started scrolling their selection, which was on one page, so I had to scroll vertically. And they had added this little nice feature, headings that scroll horizontally. So if you remember this marquee element, well, they could have used that there. So the headings were scrolling horizontally, and I started feeling really sick, and I felt nauseous. I'm glad that I didn't have to throw up, but I had to rest for about 30 minutes or so before I could do anything after that. And yeah, I didn't buy any chocolate that time, and not it hasn't been possible since then from that store. But it was really it was surprising how bad it was, but it was bad for me. And you might wonder why I'm telling this story here, this personal story. And one reason is actually to build empathy, because when we are building websites, for example, in most cases, users are just somebody somewhere there, and we don't really, like, they are not maybe that real. And I think this is true, especially with the accessibility related things, because if we don't know those people who are like, when we are trying to make sites accessible, and like, we don't, for example, know anybody who's blind, we don't really know how they use the web, and it might be that we don't care, not because we are evil or anything, it's just because we don't know. And that's, well, that's normal, that's human. But here I'm kind of trying to present at least one person who benefits from these things, that whenever you are in a position where you are building something that has to do with motion, maybe you might think of me and these things that I've said, and remember these tips that I'm gonna give, and maybe implement this feature there. So yeah, but because I'm not the only one who benefits from this, like, well, reduced motion, we're gonna talk a bit about who else benefits from this. So the biggest group of people who have problems with motion on the web is people with vestibular disorders. And that's an umbrella term for multiple different conditions that affect the vestibular system. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the word vestibular system, that's the thing that has to do with, for example, balance, and it's located in somewhere in the ear. I can't really tell you anatomically correct details about this, but just to give the idea of what we are talking about here. Causes for these conditions can be anything from an injury, illness. It can be a genetic condition, but in many cases the cause remains unknown. That was, for example, in my case, like, there was no apparent reason, and well, the cause remains unknown. Symptoms can be anything from, well, dizziness to nausea, and even hearing changes. So there are like lots of things that can happen that are, well, unpleasant, or even like can hurt. But like, people with vestibular disorders, they aren't the only ones who benefit from reduced motion, because motion can trigger, for example, a migraine or in an epileptic seizure. So people who have migraine or epilepsy can benefit from reduced motion. Also, animations can be distracting. I don't know if you've ever been distracted when there is something happening in the kind of like corner of your eye, and then like you've been concentrating, and then you see something, and then you, well, get sidetracked. Like, less animations can be good for well, everybody, but especially for people who get sidetracked easily. But I have to also say that not all animations or motion is bad, because there are people who benefit from animations because they can, for example, make understanding relationships between items easier and take off some like cognitive load. So it can be helpful for anybody, but especially for those who have cognitive disabilities. So now that I'm saying that not all motion or animations are bad, let's talk about a little bit about what is problematic. Valhead was doing research about this. If you're interested on the research, I've added a link to the article at the end of the slides. But yeah, Valhead was doing research on this, and even though like triggers can be like, they vary from person to person, there were actually 3 common things that can trigger these symptoms for people. First, relative size of the movement. Second, distance covered, and then mismatched directions and speed. These first 2 are, in a way, different sides of the same thing. And when something's moving, for example, across large distance, and here when we are talking about distance or space, it's more about perceived space. Then also the mismatched directions and speed. Well, if something is moving to another direction than like the natural scrolling that's happening at the same time, or like something is moving on a speed that's not directly linked to the scrolling speed, those can be really problematic. Well, that was, for example, for me, it was the case when the like horizontal scrolling headers were scrolling horizontally and I was scrolling vertically. There was this mismatch in directions. And I also want to note that animations that involve only non-moving properties, such as opacity, color, or blurs, they are less likely to be problematic. Okay, now that we've talked about a bit about who benefits from reduced motion, let's talk about the prefers reduced motion media feature. It's added in media queries level 5 specification, which is, well, for those of you who know that like really many details about these specifications, know that it's a draft. However, the support for it, it's rather good. I could say that all the modern browsers support it. And then there is Internet Explorer. So if you are developing something for Internet Explorer, then these things doesn't really like, you can't do anything about it. But all the others have like pretty good support. I've added 2 examples of sites that use this prefers reduced motion media feature. I'm not gonna show examples of them because we are doing this remotely. Animations can be really laggy, so it's possible that you don't really see any animations. And another thing is that there is a chance that I start feeling dizzy or nauseous or something else. So I kind of want to finish this talk without those symptoms. So if you're interested, you can, like after the talk, you can, I will send the slides and you can check these links. And now you might be thinking that, okay, where am I gonna, or how am I gonna check the difference? Well, you can always turn the like systems, operating systems level setting on. For example, in Mac, it's found under the accessibility settings. But if you are using Chrome or Edge, or I guess like every Chromium-based browser is good for this, they have this possibility to emulating this media feature. And I will show how here. So I'm in the developer tools and
Eevis, we actually cannot see the developer tools on your screen.
Okay.
I think if you are sharing the tab, it only shows the tab and not the tools.
Actually, I'm sharing the window, but maybe it's not okay. Maybe I'm not showing it then because like, so there in the developer tools, there is like on the top right corner, there is this customize and control dev tools. And then there is under more tools, there is rendering tab. And there it's possible to, when you scroll down, there is this emulate CSS media feature, prefers reduced motion. And if you're interested, I think like if you don't get it from my, like when I'm talking here, then please do Google. There are good tutorials for that. So I think that's like the best way to find the how to like emulate this one. So yeah, all right.
It worked.
Yay.
I tried it on the AirPods Pro page and it worked.
Yay, great to hear. Good. So we have somebody who has managed to do that. But yeah, you can like try these out later and with the like Chromium-based browsers. I'm gonna say a couple of words about these. First, the Animal Crossing webpage. It's like what I like about it is that they have this button for those who have this prefers reduced motion setting on. They have a button where like these people still can choose to play the animations. So there is basically a like play button on the like top of the page. And why I like it is because, well, I get a choice. If I want to see the animations, I can push that button and be prepared for anything that's coming from there. So like one of the worst things with this, like these animations is that when they attack somewhere out of the blue and I don't have any time to prepare for them. But if I know that they are coming and like I have a control to like, for example, play the animation, that's way easier. So yeah. And then there is this AirPods Pro website. Like I took a quick sneak peek when I was preparing for this presentation. I think there was lots of going on with the animations, but in the reduced motion version of the website, well, there is no animation basically. So like that's a good thing for me at least. So yeah, the difference is rather big there. Now we can go into the how to do this part. So I'm going to go through how to use this in CSS, vanilla JavaScript, and then I will say a few words about GIFs, how to do these things. But you can, like, in general, you have, in a way, two options. Maybe two is good number here, but like you can either just respect the settings, like and like in the AirBots Pro version, or you can provide a option for user to choose if they want to have more animations or less animations. But I would say that any case, if you are providing this option, then like still respect the OS level settings. And yeah, actually in TechWeeklies website, there is a toggle for, I think it's remove animation, if I remember correctly. I haven't been there for a while. I didn't remember to check the like correct wording, but it's on the bottom of the page. And I think I should have said something else here, but I don't remember what it was. So I'm just going to continue to the how to do this in CSS. Here's an example block of code where we have this class animated content, which has an animation with, there is like, I on purpose, I left out these actual animations. So no slide in or fade animations there, like the keyframes and stuff. So to make this one shorter, but still I can tell you that in the first one, there's, well, things happening, lots of things. And that's the default for everyone for animated content, and then animated content class. And then there is a media query for prefers reduced motion, reduce. So what I forget to say is that prefers reduced motion has two values. It's either reduce or it's no preference. And this reduce is for everybody who has set operating systems level setting on. And here, for those who have this prefers reduced motion, reduce, there is a different animation, which is, well, it's actually slowed down. So one thing to note here is that I'm talking about reducing motion, not completely removing it. And in some cases, like just slowing things down is enough. Not in all of the cases, but like in some cases. So that's an example of that. You could also do it in a way that the like reduced motion version is the default, and then the media query is for those who have no preference set. And I like this idea actually better because, first of all, there is this kind of who the default is for. So the default styles without the media query, they are for those, like, well, for everyone, but like this reduced motion version would be the default. And then for those who don't, like, who can take more motion, there is an enhanced version for, like, with the no preference, like prefers reduced motion, no preference media query. Also, there is this thing that when browsers encounter a media feature that they don't support, they just ignore it. So then the like reduced motion version would be the like, well, these would see that version and not the one with like more movement. And why I put it like here this way, that I didn't implement or write the example with the second version I was telling about is just to like show different ways to write this prefers reduced motion reduce here. So because this is CSS media feature, we can query the value with Windows match media function. So here we are querying that value. So, and I want to note that this prefers reduced motion without any value it's actually a shorthand for prefers reduced motion reduce. So that's why I don't like this is again one way to write this. So that's why it's this way here. So we are querying this value and then attaching a event listener here to if that value changes, and then like we would there handle the reduced motion within the event listener. And then there are GIFs. I have to apologize for the formatting of this code block. I couldn't, for some reason, line breaks weren't working at all, so I have to do some scrolling here. But there are, well, I can tell about a couple of ways to how to display GIFs, because they are something that you can't like straight away control with CSS animations or well JavaScript. So like when they are like, well, the format of the file is such that you can't like turn off the like animation from there. And I want to say that, for example, Slack has a setting that you can remove animation, and that setting actually removes every animation from GIFs and emojis and everything. So if somebody has sent me a GIF, because like I have the setting on, and if somebody has sent me a GIF which like where the animation is like seeing the animation is required for understanding the meaning of that GIF, and I haven't reacted, I'm sorry, I just didn't see it. So I'm not like, there's nothing like I'm mad or anything, so I'm sorry. But yeah, back to the HTML elements here. So one way to handle the GIFs and reduced motion could be with picture elements. And for those who are not that familiar with picture element, here we have inside the picture element, there is this image tag, which is giving, for example, the alt text for the picture. And then it's also, because it's the bottommost, it's the default path would be given there. So if we have a GIF, then we should have a static image of that GIF, and that would be given in the image tag as a source attribute. But then there's this source tag where you can define different source to an image with with different conditions. So I think I've seen this to be used with, for example, breakpoints. So when like there is a like smaller, the viewport width is smaller, then let's show this smaller picture, and when the width increases, then show different picture. But here we are actually querying with this media attribute that prefers reduced motion, no preference. So for those who don't have this reduced motion setting on, the GIF would be shown, and for those who have it, so prefers reduced motion reduce, we would just show the like static image. And there are like, you could enhance this with adding a button to play the animation. There's actually a link to an article with instructions how to do that at the end of the slides. And also one way to like implement the GIFs that would play on demand is to have a image and GIF stacked on each other and use a details element to play the animation actually on demand. And this might sound really like, it's possible that like I'm not explaining it well, but if you're interested what I mean with this, there is also a link to an article that explains this thing too. So there are different ways to handle GIFs too. And what I forgot to say is that, because I've given examples in CSS and vanilla JavaScript and about GIFs, there's also an article how to handle prefers reduced motion in React. So there are lots of readings in the end of the slides. So, all right, I think I've said all I was about to say, but like, I hope that you will remember 3 things from this talk: that there are people who really like suffer physically when they encounter certain kinds of animations, and they can turn the reduce motion setting on the systems level. And we as developers, we can respect that setting with the prefers reduced motion media feature. And also that not all animation or motion is bad, but there are some things like what I mentioned that they are problematic. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome, thanks a lot, Eevis. Really interesting stuff. I found the Animal Crossing example really kind of interesting and good to test out. Does anyone have any kind of comments or experiences or ideas or questions that you want to talk about? One of the things that I was thinking about is, since that setting is also is only about reducing the motion, is there anything that allows people to say that like they don't want any like moving things on the page, like disabling GIFs or videos or animations or things like that? Or is the only option to just reduce?
So just to like make sure that I understood your question. So it was on the web page.
Yes,
yeah. So basically, like there is just this prefers reduced motion like media feature, and then you can decide what it actually means. Like if you are using that, of course you can implement a settings, be it a like a toggle on the like dark theme, light theme type of toggle, or like if you have an app where there is real like settings section, that there you could add more steps, but it could be just like no motion too. So it's kind of up to you.
Yeah,
I have a question. Firstly, thank you for this. This is a super insightful first-hand perspective on something that's quite abstract when you read about it in documentation and literature online. From your perspective, you indicated that when scrolling is not the source of the motion and there's something that happens that sort of doesn't feel intrinsic to what you're doing, does this include easing and things like that? Do they cause problems? Or is that still linked enough to scrolling or interaction that it's okay?
I think I cannot answer that, actually, because, yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, great presentation. Thank you for the stuff, and super interesting. And I loved your point about the empathy, because I have been working on this marquee style element which has scrolling text, and I have actually gotten headache out of developing it because I have been looking at the scrolling text for days. So I might actually even choose to prefer reduced motion.
That's 2021 and marquee. It's making a comeback.
Yeah, I might actually give a presentation about that at some point.
Yeah, I was like, when I was preparing for the presentation, I was thinking that maybe I will just say that, yeah, marquee is deprecated for a reason. I know that the like real reason for its deprecation was maybe about the like separating the styles and animations to the like styles layer and like not tying it to the like HTML, but I have an opinion. Like my opinion is that it should be deprecated from the whole web, like animation and all. But yeah, that's my opinion, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of like scrolling text, I don't know if it's ever been good in like any context. Like when you watch on TV and you see some news and there's scrolling text, it's like, oh, now I missed it, and now I need to wait for a couple of minutes for it to come back, and then you miss it again. And I've always found it like also a usability issue, not just an accessibility issue as well.
Yeah, and it's so stressing to watch news if there's a lot of scrolling text underneath, because you have to focus on two things at the same time.
Yeah, I agree.
Has anybody used in some recent projects the reduce motion? What was it called?
Prefers reduced motion.
Reduced motion, yeah. If